The mechanic's shop was the loudest and dirtiest place I'd seen on this space station so far, and somehow that was comforting. All the ritzy retail stores and elaborate restaurants tried to look as fancy as possible, even the cheap ones. But this place felt honest and straightforward. It had bare concrete floors and the kind of shelf displays that didn't bother with signs to actually explain what you were looking at. A real mechanic would know. I had no idea, but I was just here to help haul things. Blip and Blop might have been a better choice if the things in question proved to be heavy, but they were off wrangling jumbo tubs of food and medical supplies with egg skin. And anyways, we had the big hover sled this time. It would probably be fine. Mimi was talking fast with an employee about manifolds and vents and lots of other words, waving a couple green tentacles while he stood on the rest. The employee was the biggest heat seeker I could remember seeing, which was still only mid-rib height on me. He reminded me of the short gym guys from back home, able to build muscle in every direction but up. A box thumped onto a counter near me. "You here to help lift and pull?" I found an older human woman grinning at me, wearing a tank top covered in grease and long white hair held back in a ponytail. Also the kind of arm muscle that said she yanked engines out of spaceships for fun. "Something like that," I said with a smile. "Gotta make sure nothing falls off the sled." She waved a hand. "Ah, we'll strap it down for you. There's enough ramps around here to cause problems if we don't." "I bet," I said, thinking back to the last time I'd chased something important down a hill. "Don't want to risk any explosions or chemical spills." "Or slamming a gear shaft into the side of a building," she agreed. "There was a bit of a mess the last time someone was sure they didn't need their stuff tied down." I winced. "Ouch! Yeah, it's standard procedure now," she said, opening the box to pull out multiple smaller boxes, all labeled with arcane terminology and numbers. They rattled as she stocked them on the shelf under the counter. If they'd asked me, it would have been standard from the start, but what do I know? I've only been doing this kind of work for decades, on more planets than I care to count. "Sounds exciting," I said as she finished stocking. "I haven't been out here all that long by comparison, but there's always something new to see." A glance around the shop took in rows of alien technology, a heat seeker with scales painted silver, and one of those centipede-like people whose species name I didn't remember. I was pretty sure they were looking at a jetpack display. "Oh sure, plenty of weirdos out here," the woman said easily, ripping tape off the box and flattening it. Though it's easy to tip over from marveling at the wonders to feeling the kind of intense homesickness that you get when you're light years away from home. I suppose so. I'd been pretty lucky on that front, since my alien co-workers were friendly sorts who made me feel welcome. But there were times when the sheer amount of empty space between me and Earth was a little too much to think about. "You've got to find ways to remind yourself of where you come from and take pride in it," the older woman said with a pointed finger, like a grandparent giving career advice. "Recreate bits of home while you're far from it." I thought back to the potted plants and sun lamp in my quarters, kept high enough that the cat couldn't chew on them. "I like to think I do that," I said. "Do you have a preferred method? Classic Earth songs, googly eyes stuck in funny places?" She barked a laugh. "Ha! Nothing I'd admit to. But I'll show you my current favorite touchstone to humanity." She dug in a pocket. I stepped closer, curious as she pulled out something palm-sized. She rested her elbows on the counter and held it up, framed by splayed fingers with appropriate drama. It was a rock, smooth and shiny like it had been polished by a river, and then by a thick layer of varnish, and it was covered in minuscule handprints, all in earth tones, like a cave painting reduced to pocket size. Some in silhouettes like tiny hands had pressed mud or ash against the cave wall, and others shadowed by color, like the prehistoric artist had chewed charcoal and spat it carefully around their fingers. I'd done that in school one day, with one of the cool teachers, who taught us the basics of humanity's oldest style of airbrushing. It was incredibly messy and trickier than I'd expected. It gave me renewed respect for the artists from eons ago whose artwork had survived into modern times. And this was that same thing, made small enough to carry around the galaxy, a tiny reminder of home. "That's fantastic," I breathed. "Isn't it?" she asked, rubbing at the shine. "I got it from a traveling artist a while back. If I was in a different line of work, I'd sell clothes with this pattern on them. It's the kind of thing that makes other Earthlings smile." She stood up and put it back in her pocket with a wink. "Not like googly eyes, but still good." "Yes, still good," I agreed, smiling. I would have liked to talk more about it, maybe find out where that traveling artist had gone, but Mimi was wrapping up his conversation. A door opened to admit a trio of heat seekers carrying a huge cylinder that was probably destined for somewhere in the guts of our ship. "I'll get the tie-down straps," said the woman, rummaging under a different section of counter. "Thanks," I said, though I don't think she heard me. The air was full of talk and the sound of clawed feet on concrete. I hurried to take up a position by the controls of the hover sled, making sure it stayed locked in place. The team worked quickly, and in no time they had it strapped down well enough that it wouldn't budge even if the gravity cut out completely, which had better not happen. I'd had more than enough of that kind of nonsense at the last station. Mimi processed the payment, tapping a screen with one tentacle tip and thanking the employees for having this what's-it in stock. I got the impression that it wasn't the one he'd actually come to get, but it was better in some way or other. "Thanks again," I said as we tugged the sled toward the door. I waved at the other human and she waved back, two hands signaling kinship briefly across the room. Then she took her flattened box into the back and I stepped out into the artificial sunlight, looking for signs leading back to the spaceport. The gravity behaved, and the ramps were no trouble. Blip and Blop were there to help unload the thing. I asked Mimi if he wanted 3 people to maneuver it into wherever it went, or if I should go put the hover sled away. He was busy climbing inside of the cylinder with a flashlight for whatever reason. "Nah, not enough space for everybody," his gravelly voice echoed. "Let me just... Really? Another one?" A faint squeak sounded like he was rubbing a tentacle against the side. "What is it?" I asked, bending to look inside. Blip and Blop crowded behind me, a jumble of curious muscles and silks. Mimi grumbled, "This is the 3rd engine part that I've gotten with these annoying marks. All from different sources, too. If I ever find out which finger-having species is doing it, we are going to have words." Deep inside the cylinder, in a spot that likely would never have been seen by anyone but an agile mechanic, was a patch of handprints. Mimi had already smeared the ones made in grease, but the others looked like they might have been paint, all in earth tones. A cave painting in the depths of a spaceship. Blip and Blop chorused, "Not it." I bit my lip to hide a smile. "It's a mystery."